Alrighty, hello all. See, there's a few people that haven't signed into our doc. Give a few more minutes there. And if you have anything you'd like to discuss today, please go ahead and add it to our agenda. Oh, all right, Milan, there you go. Cool. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hello. We could, I guess I could start with a little bit of a status update and we'll go around if anybody wants to give theirs. On my side in particular, honestly, I've been working more on docs than anything else. My goal for today, at least this week, is to publish either a blog post or a guide for how to work SSL or add CA certs to the build process. Right now, that solution does involve mounting volumes, so it's nothing very specific to Pack, but that is the way that you would get that result for Pack. As part of that, I supported a few individuals on Windows environments and did find that the solution does also apply for Docker for Windows, which was really nice. Let's see. I think that was pretty much it on my side. Anybody else want to go?
I got a quick one. We were working on getting that lifecycle image support for Windows in. I think we finally figured out what the problem was, so we can get rid of the sleeps, and I think it should be ready for review pretty shortly. But thank you all for the input on that one. I'm just going to do a last pass to make sure we addressed all the comments in there.
Cool. Do you want to give a hint as to what the problem was, or want to
Sure,
validate first?
It's useful to know too. The requirement was to use process isolation for any Windows container that you create and tests. The Windows default isolation for Docker Windows is Hyper-V. Yeah, that's the short version, but we can deep dive. I find it fascinating, but
interesting. Cool. Any other updates?
Just real quickly, we merged last Friday the GitHub actions that are responsible for consuming Buildpacks for the registry and indexing them. So that's good. In addition to that, I'll be spending some time this week just kicking the tires on it and making sure that there's no other obvious bugs that need to be addressed before making it public. And yeah, slowly making progress, but it's looking pretty good right now.
Okay, I guess I'm just been working on giving people some more visibility into Buildpacks. So letting them examine Buildpacks on the registry, local archives, and remote and local images. So.
Cool. And this is on the pack inspect Buildpack command that's coming up, right? Cool. All right. Any updates? All right, let's move on to release planning. I guess one of the things that we could start doing as part of release planning well before we actually are, in kind of that release process feature complete is we could start looking at the milestone. And I know someone had called out previously that there are some issues in here that have a status of discussion needed. And I think maybe we could circle around and focus on some of those. Let me share my screen. Okay, am I sharing the right one? You see the issues? Cool. All right, so discussion needed, we could go down here and we could see whether or not, stop me if this is something that you think that is worth discussing right now. I know for some of these, David Freilich, who's not on the call, probably wants to discuss, but we will likely skip over those. So the first one on the list is add labels to pack volumes. So the idea of this is to, like, during pack build, we create these volumes that we use for caching and whatnot. And the idea here is to enable support to figure out what those volumes are so that other tools, and maybe a tool of our own, could then go and clear these volumes directly. So just adding annotations to do better cleanup process, right? I don't necessarily know what the discussion is that is necessary. I think this is ready to go. But like I said, if you have any thoughts or conversation that you want to have around this, feel free to jump in. Next one, adjust container limits. This one seems like it's not, I looked through it, Ben Hale requested this. Sounds like the Buildpacks team also has some requests to this from the Pacato side. I don't know if anybody has any further input, but it seems like it's still a lot of, conversation, and I don't know how actionable it really is as far as priority goes for this release. All right, moving on, we've got cache images, cache image registry. I was looking at this. Honestly, I think I'm gonna go ahead and change this from discussion needed to actually ready. So the idea of this is we use cache volumes essentially for everything. And in some particular cases, I think it's been brought up even recently, where we want to enable the user to provide a cache image location so that they could use that as kind of like the caching mechanism instead of using local volumes, right? And so if you think about like pack and CI, this will be very beneficial because those volumes typically aren't persisted in most CI systems, but the registry, they could kind of just use that. So yeah, I'll take an action item for that later. Then we have digital signature support. So there's a pretty big open question here. I think we're talking about content trust and image signing. There's a lot of research that we've been doing on the VMware side in regards to image signing, and particularly Notary v1 versus Notary v2, which Notary v2 is still like very early stages of the discussion or the spec side of things. Looking at Notary v1, everything is currently possible without introducing anything to a Buildpack project. So I don't necessarily think that this is something that we'd like to achieve. We might consider adding better integration, but overall, it's the notary aspect is like an after the fact operation, right? So if you think about other platforms like KPack or Tecton or something, you could always sign or notarize an image after the fact, if that makes sense.
What about, does this relate to the registry in any way? Like when you start publishing build packs, build and run images, like the things that we use to run, to provide the build. Is that something where pack would that be useful? I don't know. Oh,
are you saying like when pack does a build, it should be taking into consideration whether those images themselves are signed?
Potentially, yeah. It could be a way to make sure all the build packs when it builds a ephemeral builder and stuff like that are signed, if that's an option that you set, as well as the build and run images. But I don't know whether that's a desirable thing. I'm not really sure where this use case came from.
Yeah, and I think that's the clarifying question that David just posted, or I mean, I say just, but this was back in July, and we got no reply, right? I think that use case is very different to the use case that I made mention to. So I think those are discussions that maybe are worth having. I don't know, Jesse, if you want to tack something onto this issue,
Sure.
And we could explore it further. But I think that might be more reasonable, given the fact that we already have a trusted concept in pack. It might be worth leveraging signatures there as well.
I would be loath to forget Windows in here. Just there's not an issue with any issues I've seen with Windows sending Windows images, despite them having sort of a dynamic piece of them, the foreign layers. So long as that original manifest and config stay totally intact, and it's still always treating them as foreign layers, the image signature, every signature implementation that we've looked at so far is fine with that.
That's really good to know. Cool.
There is kind of a weird trick you have to do with a air-gapped environment. You have to sideload the foreign layer into that private registry. But if you add it as a layer blob, it's just there. It'll be pulled from the registry instead of the foreign layer source if it's available in the registry. It's
Yeah, and
yeah.
To add to that, right, like the complexities of the air-gapped environments, as far as I know, one of the challenges that Notary v2 is trying to solve is for that use case. Right now, Notary, as far as I'm aware, does not work in air-gapped environments because there's a central Notary server that it needs to communicate to validate the signatures.
That makes sense, yeah.
Cool. Good discussion there. We could keep going on that. Let's see, expose functionality to download Buildpacks. I think, yeah, Jesse, you brought this one up. Do you want to add this to the agenda and we could dive deeper, or I don't know why there's some
I hadn't
discussion
thought about
needed
it. We
here.
can definitely, we can definitely discuss it.
Cool. See, how many more do we have to go? We've got a decent amount, but we can make it. Okay, nope, that's the wrong one. Only output full image name from build. I believe somebody was kind of already working on this, and this was the idea that when you do quiet mode, yeah, there you go. Okay, so yeah, I'll skip over this. It seems like it's been worked on. So we could update the label afterwards. Pack build should log lifecycle arguments. Oh, this one I feel so bad about because someone came in, created a PR for it, and then I think during the PR process, we're like, oh, we don't actually want it implemented that way. And ultimately ended up being that we weren't necessarily sure exactly what we wanted given how the environment itself is set up. So yeah, this is definitely a big conversation piece. I think I'd like to refresh myself on this topic and maybe bring it up on the next meeting. Okay, build packages. Let's see, Dan, do you know if the work that you're doing will also take into consideration packages?
Yes. In fact, I don't really know how this is that much different than the work that I'm doing right now. These two things seem kind of like synonymous, right?
Yeah.
So like from Pack's perspective, do I really want to have to like untar everything and look at the build pack time? Probably not.
Yeah, so do you mind giving a glance at this and essentially if it is a duplicate, just closing it out and encompassing it in your current task?
Yeah, happy to.
Cool. Oh, yeah, we're almost there. I feel like I'm always sweating these long lists of things. All right, WCow, build produces an unrunnable app image. I saw that there's an RFC for this. Micah, do you want to speak to this a bit more?
Yeah, the short version is that this is kind of the RFC proposes sort of a won't fix as far as the pack and life cycle is concerned. Basically, we would want to require stack authors to always make the images contain a config path similar to what the Linux images have, although the Linux images inherit that field from they inherit it from their base images. So we're just kind of adding the missing piece that's not inherited from Windows images. And all the detail in the is in the RFC if y'all wanted to look at it. Love any feedback that y'all have, but I'll bring it up at the working group too.
Cool. All right, just added a link to that issue, and yeah, I think that'll be very fruitful. Okay, so we're done reviewing all of those. Hopefully we get better over time on that process, and we could curate that a little bit more ahead of time. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, Jesse, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Expose functionality to download build packs.
Yeah, I think this was kind of a starter discussion on pack as a library instead of pack as just a CLI. In our particular use case, we're, pack, you can specify build packs via the CLI. You can do it through the library as well, but they have to, downloading build packs is something that every platform's going to have to do. And it kind of seems like, I don't know whether it belongs in pack or not, but being able to understand the different variations of how you reference a build pack, whether it's like a local folder, something that exists in a builder or a registry, that logic's going to get more complicated as we add the registry. And so it seems like it would be nice if we had a way to, given a build pack string that pack sort of does, then we can make sure that we implement that the same way in other platforms.
Cool. And then just to clarify, this is from a library perspective, right?
Yes.
So I'm trying to think.
Yeah, we use pack as a library to build images today, but we don't currently allow custom build packs in our current implementation. And so if we start doing that, like I don't think there's currently a way for us to like download those inside of like a running container, for instance, is kind of our use case. We're in a running container. We want to download these build packs and use the same semantics without users having to, figure that out, or us having to re-implement all of it.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think one of the reasons why the discussion needed was added here was that, and I know that there's been discussion around maybe not necessarily the lifecycle, but providing utility. I think what others would call pack util or
kind of like
pack tiny
util,
or
right?
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where it'll just provide this functionality from a CLI perspective. And I feel like that's still very nebulous, right? Like we haven't really figured out exactly what functionality would go into that utility. But for this particular issue, given what you've mentioned, I think we could just go ahead and do it. And then if we ever want to move it out to something else, something standalone, we could do that at that point.
And I know there's been discussions on like a lifecycle prepare phase potentially, eventually, that would download from a project TOML. And so I could see this being useful in that same, similar circumstances where lifecycle itself is going to need to parse things that are in project TOML and then potentially download them and from registries. And that would be, it would be nice to be able to not have to re-implement it in lifecycle as well.
Yeah, and I think that's where I got the pushback from Emily. I think her thoughts are this is like very much so a platform concern that she doesn't feel that it should be part of the life cycle, right? So something like Pack Lite or Platform Lite is more or less kind of what we're thinking about. But again, nothing really tangible there. So I'm gonna go ahead and move this, to status ready. And we could do this just as an interim step to unblock you at least.
The last one, just so you don't have to switch over there, I added one thing to the agenda, just asking about the Windows, like as a developer story. I know we talked about improving that, and I was wondering if there's an updated like README somewhere for someone to follow, or is it only sort of still tailored towards VMware accessible, machines and stuff?
Yeah, no, great question. It was a little bit stalled because we spent a little time to try and figure out if sort of the exact same setup that we would have for that developer machine could work as a CI machine. So we're a little bit trying to conflate the two ideas that I think I'm kind of happy to break apart again. What I was hoping for is that if those, in an ideal world, we'd have a individual developer dev machine that was as close as possible to a GitHub Actions runner, the default one. And so if it failed on CI, you'd be almost guaranteed to be able to reproduce it on that dev VM. So I think what we'll end up with is pretty close to that. We just are trying to make sure that the technical pieces make sense before we put the polish on the dock.
Yeah, I was running into some just pain points today, just trying to mess with a PR for stack packages on Lifecycle. And I think I've had 4 or 5 commits that are fixing Windows lint errors and things like that, just because it takes so long to get the GitHub action to figure out that there was a lint problem in a Windows specific file that doesn't get, tested when you're doing it on Mac OS or Linux. And so it's it would be nice to, I know I could drag out my Windows laptop and connect up a Docker host, but it would be nice to have a README to kind of figure out so I don't have to start from scratch and understand exactly how to fit those pieces together without a little bit of guidance.
So as far as your immediate debugging steps, the current docs might be sufficient if you did at least want to run make format on it or make verify. I can send you over what we have for that just to unblock it currently, but keep in mind it'll probably change pretty quickly.
Awesome.
And that also would be in kind of a rough state, but it should be functionally working.
Cool. Yeah. I think I always just run make test, but I guess I didn't realize that make verify would still hit the Windows files or something like that, even if the Go directives are build Windows only.
Yeah. How does that work? Does make test runs verify in format?
Yeah, it'll run locally on my own, and then it'll fail on GitHub CI. So I'm guessing that it probably doesn't pick up the files that are not conditionally.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, we might even exclude the verify and format phases or steps in CI because we haven't worked around how to, keep it consistent across both platforms. But I don't know if things have changed since the last time I touched it.
That might actually be, maybe that is the case right now.
But yeah, I think it's the case because the opposite is true, right? Like right now we're working with the Canico stuff, and you can't pull that stuff when you do any sort of Go build on Windows. It just doesn't exist for that platform, and so so I would expect the reverse to be true too. I think you're going to have both platforms to really get the linting and stuff at that level, probably.
Just to immediately unblock you, is it okay to? Do you have an option to stand up a GCP or an Azure VM?
I don't know. I'll have to check on that.
Okay.
I have a Windows laptop, and so I'll probably unblock myself there if it continues to become a problem for now, or at least set it up and Docker host it over from this machine or something.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Knowing that it's the verify and the format that's hanging you up, then I think I can patch something together, or at least I'll throw a couple ideas your way and see if they
cool.
help you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I just want to try to help that for other external folks.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and thanks for bringing it up.
All right. Anything else? Cool. With 2 minutes, I think we're good. All right. Thank you all for showing up. See you next time.